This process of the night of sense, once we know most of our unprocessed secret motivation, this possesses the programs for happiness and reduces their intensity so that although they may not go away completely, it's easy for us to see it happening and to back off if possible long enough to recognize it, even to call it by name and to give it to God. Or at least to take refuge in the ground of being that is gradually being awakened. And St. John of the Cross, in his own language, puts, I think, the same experience this way, that in temptation, the soul simply evacuates its level of consciousness and goes to the deep place that it has now the power to go to after a good deal of practice. But this probably implies the deeper purification of the night of spirits to some degree. How long these nights go on, I think there's mostly been identified by John of the Cross in an organized way. He was trained in a scholastic university at Salamanca. But all the mystics refer to it, so it's nothing new, but it's a very common experience there. That the night of spirit tends to begin after a significant period of habitual prayer, because we need some resources on every level of our being, body, soul, and spirit, to be able to handle the what to us seems like the disintegration of who we are, or the false self, or a loss of the easy or consoled presence of God that we may have enjoyed and needed to enjoy for many years. The consolations of God that sometimes occur during the centering prayer are generally more delightful than any kind of physical, mental, or relational joy that can be offered. So they heal, if necessary, the doubts that an individual had of whether it was lovable, or whether it was worthy, or whether it was worth anything, or whether it heals the low self-esteem, which is a syndrome that's prominent in highly competitive cultures like we're in. So we shouldn't discourage people from the enjoyment of those moments of peace or consolation, or this pleasurable sense of God's presence, because they may need this as part of their therapy, just like the process of transference in the psychotherapeutic situation enables the therapist to take the place of the parent, and instead of giving back negativity or put downs, as may have been the case in the low self-image of the patient, responds with affirmation. And it reminds us that as far back as the Old Testament, blessings were extremely important. Remember the blessings of the sons of Jacob. So someone who doesn't receive the blessing, that is the affirmation of a father, has a real gap, and somebody needs to do this. And if nobody else is available, God is graciously fills the bill. But it's an invitation to take seriously. Blessings are really strokes in modern language, or affirmation, or to appreciate when someone has done well or been kind to us, and so or to make them feel the goodness that they have that is being experienced by others is a very important aspect of community life. And not everybody has the skill in giving it well, but that's because they're out of practice. In our culture, it's not a favorite practice. Either you do well, or heck with you. And So the human consideration that even if they have to be corrected or fired or something, that it doesn't mean that they're being rejected, but maybe they're being called to some other activity, or need to look into some psychological counseling, if that would be helpful. So what is happening in the repeated experience of the centering prayer at this level of deep silence is that one is accessing the divine indwelling, or the ground of being, if you're now comfortable with that terminology, which is the source of the energy that sustains us in being at every level of our human nature, body, soul, and spirit. So in as John of the Cross would put it, in a temptation, or when one's bombarded with thoughts, or the afflictive emotions are getting out of hand and urging, acting out, which makes them worse, of course, one takes refuge instantly. And you notice this is what the psalmist talks about a lot. In his difficulties, he takes refuge, usually uses military images like my high tower, my fortress. So the presence of God is the fortress by which the soul hides behind from its own thoughts and from the superficial levels of its egoic consciousness, which have no future, and preventing us from being in contact with the source of true energy, and accepting the human responsibility of co-creating with God, that is, creating a world that reflects the divine goodness, forgiveness, understanding, mercy, and all the other basic things that are revealed about God in Scripture.